Think you're smart enough? Judge asks 10-year-old in court. Ethan Miller swallowed hard as Judge Margaret Thornton stared at him over her glasses, her grey hair perfectly styled in a bun that seemed as rigid as her expression. The 10-year-old boy clenched his sweaty hands against the khaki pants his Aunt Karen had picked out, especially for that day. The Portland family court was silent, only the hum of the air conditioner cutting through the tension that seemed to swallow the room. "So, Ethan," the judge began, her voice echoing through the spacious courtroom with its dark wood paneling, "do you really think you're smart enough to decide which parent you want to live with?" The question dripped with disdain, making the boy's stomach churn. Children your age can barely choose what to wear in the morning. The defense attorney, Dr. James Brooks, a short and nervous man, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Across the room, Ethan's mother's lawyer, Dr. Sarah Johnson, watched the boy's every move intently. Ethan could feel his mother, Rebecca Miller's, gaze burning into his back. She sat in the front row, wearing the navy blue dress she always wore on important occasions, her hands clasped in her lap in a way Ethan knew well. It was how she held herself when she was trying not to cry. On the other side of the aisle, his father, Nathan Miller, sat stiffly, his impeccable grey suit contrasting with the worried look he directed at his son. Ethan knew this moment would decide not just where he would live, but the entire structure of his family, which had been falling apart for 2 years. "May I answer, Your Honor?" Ethan asked, his voice trembling slightly. Judge Margaret made an impatient gesture with her hand, as if granting a beggar a favor. "You may, but be brief. This court doesn't have time for childish daydreams." Ethan took a deep breath, remembering the words he had rehearsed hundreds of times in his bedroom mirror. "I know I'm just a kid, but this decision will change. My whole life. I know my parents better than anyone in this room. I know how they are when they're happy, when they're sad, when they're scared." He paused, seeing the judge's expression harden further. "I just want the right to be heard." "Right?" Judge Margaret leaned forward, her grey eyes flashing with rising irritation. "You think you know about rights? Child, you have no idea the complexity of the cases that come through this court every day. You don't understand the legal, financial, and psychological implications of a custody decision." The silence that followed was deafening. Ethan could hear his own breathing and the distant noise of traffic outside. His Aunt Karen, sitting beside his mother, started to rise, but the judge's sharp glare made her sit back down. "Your Honor," Dr. James interrupted, "with all due respect, the boy has the legal right to express his preference. The Child and Adolescent Protection Act is clear on—" "Don't lecture me on the law, Doctor," Judge Margaret cut in, her voice icy. "I know full well what the Act says. What I question is this child's ability to understand the consequences of his choices." Ethan felt a wave of humiliation rise in his chest. It was always like this. They always treated him like an object, something for the adults to decide, never like someone with his own feelings and opinions. He looked at his mother and saw a tear roll down her cheek. He looked at his father and noticed how his hands trembled slightly. "Please," Ethan said, his voice firmer now, "I just want to explain why I think I can make this decision." "Judge," Margaret leaned back in her tall chair, the black leather creaking under the movement. She studied the boy for a long moment, her expression unreadable. The courtroom seemed to have grown even more formal and intimidating, the high walls and dark furniture creating an atmosphere that made Ethan feel very small. "Very well," she finally said. "I'll give you exactly 3 minutes to convince me that you're mature enough to be part of this decision. But know that every word you say will be analyzed and will weigh on my final ruling about your future." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Ethan straightened his shoulders, feeling the weight of responsibility on him. This wasn't just about where he wanted to live. It was about proving that even as a child he deserved to be respected and heard. "Your Honor, 2 years ago, my parents separated because they couldn't live together anymore. I saw all the fights, all the nights my mom cried in her room thinking I wasn't listening. I watched my dad leave the house, carrying just one suitcase, trying to pretend everything was fine." Ethan's voice was steadier now, fueled by the urgent need to be understood. Judge Margaret didn't interrupt. but her gaze remained skeptical. Ethan continued, "My mom works as a nursing assistant at Mercy General Hospital. She leaves home at 5 in the morning and comes back at 7 at night. When she gets home, she still takes care of me, helps me with homework, makes my dinner. She never complains, but I see how tired she is." Ethan's mother, Rebecca, pressed a tissue to her eyes, trying to hold back the tears threatening to spill. She had worked double shifts for the past 2 years to support the household alone, and hearing her son acknowledge her efforts touched her deeply. "My dad," Ethan went on, "works as a salesman at a car dealership. He rented a small apartment near his job. Every weekend I spend with him. He tries to do special things, takes me to the mall, the movies, buys things he thinks will make me happy. But I can see he's sad too." Nathan Miller clenched his fists, fighting back emotion. Every word from his son was like an arrow straight to his heart. He really did try to make up for his absence during the week with weekend activities, but he always felt inadequate, as if he were failing as a father. Judge Margaret glanced at the clock on the wall. "Go on." "What I'm trying to say is, I understand my parents are hurting. I'm hurting too, but that doesn't mean I don't know what's best for me." Ethan paused, gathering his thoughts. "I don't want to choose between them because I love them both, but I know that the way things are now, everyone is unhappy." The first twist came when Ethan revealed something none of the adults expected to hear. "I know the real reason my parents split up," he said, his voice dropping slightly. "It wasn't just because they fought a lot. It was because my mom found out my dad had lost a lot of money gambling online. He didn't tell her, and when the bills started piling up, he tried to hide that too." The courtroom erupted in hushed murmurs. His mother's lawyer, Dr. Sarah Johnson, looked surprised at her client, whose face was red with embarrassment. Nathan Miller turned pale, his hands visibly shaking. "Order!" Judge Margaret banged her gavel. "How did you know about this, Ethan?" "Because I was awake the night they argued about it. I heard my mother crying and asking my father how he could lie to her for so long. I heard him begging for forgiveness and promising he would stop gambling, but it was too late. The trust was already broken." Ethan looked at his father, whose eyes were filled with tears. "I'm not saying this to hurt my dad. I'm saying it because you all need to understand that I know things. I may be a child, but I understand what happens in my family." Judge Margaret leaned forward, her expression slightly less hostile. For the first time since the hearing began, she seemed to really be listening to the boy. "And what else do you understand, Ethan?" "I understand that my dad is trying to recover. He started going to a support group for people who have problems with gambling. I saw the papers on the kitchen table in his apartment. He doesn't know." "I saw, but I know he's trying." Ethan took a deep breath. "And I understand that my mom still holds a grudge, but she still cares about him. When he didn't bring me back on time last month, she was frantic, calling him, thinking something had happened." Rebecca Miller covered her face with her hands. It was true. As hurt as she was, she still cared about Nathan. The genuine worry she felt that day had surprised her. The second twist was about to shake the entire courtroom. Ethan looked directly at Judge Margaret and said something no one expected. "I also understood something else. You don't like children, do you?" The silence in the room was absolute. Judge Margaret sat completely still, only her eyes narrowing dangerously. "How dare you?" she began, but Ethan continued. "I noticed how you talk to me, how you talk to other kids who come here. It's like we're a nuisance, like our opinions don't matter." Ethan wasn't being disrespectful, just observant. "I just wanted to understand why. Why do you work deciding children's lives if you don't like us?" The tension in the courtroom was palpable. Dr. James Brooks was clearly nervous, fearing his client had just destroyed any chance of a favorable hearing. Dr. Sarah Johnson watched, with interest, sensing there was more to this situation than met the eye. Judge Margaret sat in silence for a long moment, her hands clasped on the desk. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, softer, less authoritative. "Your 3 minutes are up," she said, but the coldness from before was gone. Ethan nodded, knowing he had said all he could. He sat back down in the chair between the two lawyers, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on him. Judge Margaret looked at Ethan's parents, then at the lawyers, and finally at the boy himself. Something had shifted in her expression, as if a mask had been removed. "This case is adjourned for 1 week," she announced. "I want updated reports on Mr. Nathan Miller's financial situation, including proof of attendance at support groups. I also want a psychological evaluation of all parties involved, including the child." She paused, looking directly at Ethan. "And I want the boy to be seen by a child psychologist this week. Not because I doubt his ability to understand, but because I've realized he's carrying more emotional responsibility than a child should." As people began to murmur and shift in their seats, Judge Margaret banged the gavel one last time. "Court adjourned." But before everyone could leave, she did something that surprised them all. She looked straight at Ethan and said in a much gentler tone, "Ethan, you asked me a question. Next week I might have an answer for you." Ethan walked out of the courthouse between his parents, who moved in tense silence. The revelation about the online games had put Nathan in an even tougher position, but at the same time the judge's reaction had left everyone puzzled. Outside the Portland family court, under the strong afternoon sun, the Miller family gathered for the first time in 2 years without lawyers nearby. Aunt Karen, a 50-year-old woman with dark hair tied in a ponytail, was the first to break the silence. "Ethan, you were very brave in there," she said, placing a hand on her nephew's shoulder. "But also very risky. That judge could have gotten even angrier." Rebecca Miller looked at her ex-husband, her eyes still red. "Nathan, is it true about the support group?" Nathan nodded, avoiding her gaze. "I started 3 months ago, twice a week. It's hard, but I'm trying." "Why didn't you ever tell me?" Rebecca's voice trembled between hurt and curiosity. "Because I was ashamed, and because I thought you wouldn't believe I was serious this time." Ethan watched the conversation between his parents, sensing he was witnessing something important. It was the first time in 2 years they had talked about their feelings without yelling or blaming each other. "Dad," Ethan said softly, "did you really stop gambling?" Nathan crouched to his son's level, his hands shaking slightly. "Yes, Ethan. It's been 4 months since I bet even a penny. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. But when I realized I could lose you and your mom forever," he paused, wiping away a stubborn tear. "No bet in the world was worth that." Rebecca watched the scene, fighting her own emotions. Part of her wanted to believe, wanted to forgive, wanted the family to be like it was before. But another part, the part that had suffered from lies and broken trust, was still too hurt. "I need time," she finally said, "to process all this." The third twist came when Ethan made a suggestion none of the adults had considered. "What if you both came with me to the therapist next week? Not as a couple, but as my parents, so we can all figure out together how to make this work better." The 3 adults looked at him in surprise. It was a simple suggestion, but it showed emotional maturity beyond his 10 years. "You'd really suggest that after everything we've been through?" Karen asked, amazed by her nephew's emotional generosity. "Aunt Karen, I just want everyone to stop hurting, including you," Ethan replied, looking at his parents. "I don't know if you'll ever get back together, but I know you can be my parents without hating each other." That afternoon, each member of the Miller family went home carrying thoughts and feelings they hadn't experienced in a long time. Ethan, in particular, felt both relieved and uneasy. He had managed to be heard, but now he had to face the consequences of his revelations. Over the next week, many things happened that none of them could have predicted. The first surprise came on Tuesday, when the child psychologist assigned to evaluate Ethan, Dr. Emily Parker, made an unexpected visit to his school. Ethan was in math class when the school secretary, Mrs. Robinson, appeared at the door. "Ethan, Miller, please come to the office. There's someone here to see you." The boy's stomach tightened. Over the past few days, he had constantly worried that confronting the judge might have hurt his chances in court. He followed Mrs. Robinson through the halls of Lincoln Elementary School, his sneakers squeaking on the tiled floor. In the office, a young woman around 35 years old, with curly hair tied in a casual bun and colorful framed glasses, waited for him with a warm smile. "Hi, Ethan. I'm Dr. Emily. We spoke briefly on the phone yesterday, remember? I'm the psychologist who will be working with you this week." Ethan remembered. His mother had explained that he needed to talk to a psychologist before the next hearing. He had imagined someone more serious, more like Judge Margaret. "Am I in trouble?" was Ethan's first question, showing the anxiety he'd carried since the hearing. Dr. Emily chuckled softly. "No, Ethan, you're not in any trouble. In fact, I'm here because I was impressed by what I heard about your participation in court. I wanted to get to know you better." They sat in a small room the school had provided for their conversation. Dr. Emily took a small notebook from her bag, but didn't immediately start writing in it. "Ethan, tell me how you felt during the hearing." "Scared," he answered honestly. "The judge seemed mad at me before I even opened my mouth." "And why do you think she was mad?" Ethan thought for a moment. "I don't know. Maybe because she doesn't like kids, like I said. Or maybe because she thinks kids don't understand anything." "Do you think you understand things?" "I understand some things. I know when my parents are sad, when they're worried. I know they loved each other a lot before everything went wrong." Ethan paused, fiddling with the zipper on his school jacket. "But there are some things I don't understand." "Like what?" "Like why grown-ups think pretending everything's fine protects kids. My parents thought I didn't know about my dad's gambling problems, but I heard them fighting. It was worse not knowing exactly what was happening than knowing the truth." Dr. Emily nodded, jotting down a few notes now. "Ethan, do you feel responsible for your parents' problems?" The question caught the boy off guard. He'd never thought about it directly, but now that she asked— "Sometimes," he admitted. "Sometimes I think if I were a better son, easier to take care of, my parents wouldn't be so stressed and wouldn't fight as much." "And do you think that's true?" Ethan was silent for a long moment. "My head says no, but my heart sometimes says yes." The fourth twist came when Dr. Emily revealed something that would completely change Ethan's perspective on the situation. "Ethan, can I tell you a secret? Judge Margaret called me personally to request this evaluation. She didn't want it to go through the usual channels because she wanted to make sure you'd be heard by someone who understands children." Ethan looked up, confused. "But she was so unfriendly to me." "Sometimes, Ethan, adults act unfriendly when they're testing whether a child truly believes what they're saying. She wanted to see if you'd stand your ground even when challenged. So she doesn't hate me. Quite the opposite. She was very impressed by you. So much so that she asked me to look into something specific." Ethan waited, curious. "She wants to know if you really understand the implications of a custody decision, or if you're just repeating things you've heard from the adults around you." "And how will you figure that out?" Dr. Emily smiled. "By talking to you, observing how you think, seeing how you solve problems. For example, if you could create the perfect situation for your family, what would it look like?" Ethan thought carefully before answering. "I'd want my parents to be happy. That doesn't necessarily mean they have to get back together, but it means they need to stop hurting each other. And I want a home where I feel safe and loved. And where would that home be? I don't know yet. That's why I want to be part of the decision, because I'm the one who'll have to live with the consequences every day." Dr. Emily Parker was impressed by the answer. It was a mature and well-articulated perspective for a child Ethan's age. Meanwhile, Nathan Miller was going through his own turning point. On Wednesday, during his session at the support group for compulsive gamblers, he finally decided to talk about the court hearing. The group met in a back room at Grace Methodist Church in downtown Portland. There were 8 people of various ages who gathered twice a week to share their experiences and support each other in recovery. "Nathan," said the group coordinator, Mr. Wilson, a 60-year-old man who had battled gambling addiction for over 5 years, "you seem to have something weighing on your mind today." Nathan looked around the circle of blue plastic chairs at faces that had become familiar over the past 3 months. There was Melissa, a 40-year-old teacher who had lost her home betting online; William, a retiree who'd spent his entire pension on slot machines; Jennifer, a saleswoman who stole company money to gamble and nearly went to jail. "My son was in court this week," Nathan began, his voice shaky, "to decide his custody, and he told everyone, including the judge, about my gambling problem." The group fell silent. They knew how painful it was when the consequences of addiction directly affected children. How did that make you feel? Asked Melissa, who was also a mother and understood the pain of disappointing a child. Destroyed, Nathan admitted. But also I'm proud. Proud? William looked confused. My 10-year-old son had the courage to speak the truth in a room full of adults. He stood up for me, even after everything I'd done. Said he knew I was trying to recover. Nathan ran his hand through his hair, a nervous habit he'd developed in recent years. I never told him about the group, but he knew. He saw the papers, noticed my changed behavior. Kids notice more than we think. Mr. Wilson nodded. And how does that make you feel about your recovery? It makes me want to try even harder, because I realized that even when I thought I was hiding everything from him, he was suffering along with me. He deserves a father who's honest with him. The fifth twist came when Jennifer, the saleswoman in the group, revealed something unexpected. Nathan, can I tell you something? I know your ex-wife. Nathan looked up, surprised. What do you mean? Rebecca Miller, the nurse at Mercy General Hospital. She takes care of my Aunt Betty there. She's one of the most dedicated people I've ever seen. My aunt always speaks highly of her. Nathan felt a mix of pride and sadness. She was always dedicated. To everything, to everyone. I was the one who didn't appreciate that. My aunt always says Rebecca is one of those people who puts everyone before herself, always stays late when someone needs help, always tries to solve others' problems. Jennifer paused. My aunt also says she seemed very tired lately, and sad. She's been raising Ethan alone for 2 years because of me, Nathan said, guilt heavy in his voice. No, Nathan, Mr. Wilson interrupted. You're recovering. That's what matters now. Guilt from the past will only hinder your recovery if you let it. But how do I fix what I broke? One day at a time, Melissa replied, and by being honest about the process, your ex-wife and son deserve to see who you're becoming, not just who you were. On Thursday, it was Rebecca Miller's turn for her own revelation. She was finishing her shift at the hospital when she was approached by Dr. Catherine Williams, the head of the nursing department. Rebecca, can I speak with you privately? Rebecca followed the supervisor to her office, worried. Dr. Williams was known to be fair but strict, and Rebecca couldn't think of anything she might have done wrong. Please, have a seat, said Dr. Williams, pointing to a chair in front of her desk. Rebecca, how long have you worked here? 8 years, doctor. And in all those years, have you ever taken personal time off beyond mandatory holidays? Rebecca thought. I don't think so, doctor. Maybe a day or two when Ethan was sick. Exactly. Rebecca, you're one of our best employees. Your colleagues respect you, patients like you, and doctors trust your work. But I'm concerned. Concerned? Did I do something wrong? Quite the opposite. You're doing everything right, but you're pushing yourself too hard. Over the past few months, you've been constantly working overtime, covering shifts for absent colleagues, taking on responsibilities beyond your role. Dr. Williams leaned forward. Rebecca, when was the last time you did something just for yourself? The question took Rebecca by surprise. She tried to remember but couldn't. Since the separation, her life had become a routine of work-home Ethan work. I don't remember. Rebecca, I know you're going through a difficult divorce. I know you're raising a child alone, but you won't be able to take good care of him if you don't take care of yourself too. The sixth twist came when Dr. Williams revealed the real reason for the conversation. Actually, Rebecca, someone came to see me today, asking about you. Rebecca felt her heart race. Who? A psychologist named Emily Parker. She's conducting a family evaluation for a custody case. She mentioned you're Ethan Miller's mother. Yes, that's right. We had a hearing in court this week. Rebecca, she came to check if you have the emotional and professional stability to care for Ethan. Of course, I said yes, that you're one of the most responsible and dedicated people I know. Dr. Williams paused. But I also mentioned I'm worried about your emotional well-being. What does that mean for my case? I don't know, but I do know you need help. And I don't just mean professional help. You need a support system, time to process everything. That's happened, space to heal. Rebecca felt tears burning in her eyes. Doctor, I can't afford to process things. I have a child to raise, bills to pay. Rebecca, listen to me. If you don't take care of yourself, you won't be able to care for Ethan the way he deserves. And from what the psychologist told, Ami, your son is very observant. He's noticed you're struggling. That night, Rebecca came home later than usual. Ethan was at the kitchen table doing homework, a plate of reheated food beside his books, a scene that repeated almost every day. "Hi, Mom," Ethan said without looking up from his notebook. "Aunt Karen left food in the fridge for you." Rebecca studied her son, his slightly messy brown hair, his focus on the math problems, the pencil between his teeth as he thought. He seemed so mature for his age, so independent. When had that happened? "Ethan, can we talk?" The boy looked up, immediately alert at his mother's serious tone. "Am I in trouble?" "No, sweetheart. I want to talk about how you're feeling. With everything going on." Ethan closed his notebook and turned to face her fully. "About the court stuff. About everything. The court, the separation, how our lives have changed." Ethan thought for a moment. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you still love Dad?" The question hit Rebecca like a punch to the gut. She hadn't expected such directness from her son. "Why do you ask that?" "Because during the hearing, when he talked about trying to improve, you cried. And it wasn't just sadness, there was something else." Rebecca sat beside her son, impressed by his perception. "Ethan, love between adults is complicated. I still care about your father, but I'm also hurt by him." "But do you still love him?" Rebecca sighed. "Yes, Ethan, I still do. But loving someone doesn't always mean you can live with them." The seventh twist came with Ethan's response. "Mom, I think you two should talk more, not about me, not about the court, about the two of you." "Why?" "Because both of you are hurting, and I think part of the pain is because you haven't given yourselves a chance to really understand what happened." Rebecca looked at her son with a mix of admiration and concern. "Ethan, you shouldn't be worrying about these things. You're a child." "Mom, I am a child, but I'm also part of this family, and families talk to each other about important things." That same night across town, Nathan Miller was also having an important conversation. He had called his older sister, Allison, Miller, who lived in New York City and whom he hadn't spoken to in nearly a year. "Nathan, is it really you?" Allison's voice was surprised. "It's been so long." "Hey, Allie, I know it's been a while. I need to talk to someone in the family about some things." "Is everything okay? Is it about Ethan?" Nathan told his sister about the court hearing, about his struggle with gambling addiction, about the support group. Allison listened quietly, occasionally making small sounds of understanding. "Nathan, why didn't you ever tell me any of this? Shame, and because I thought I could handle it alone." "And Ethan? How is he dealing with all this?" "Better than I deserve. He's amazing, Allie. At the hearing, he stood up for us, for both of us. Said he knew I was trying to get better." Allison was silent for a moment. "Nathan, can I ask you something? Did you really stop gambling, or are you just cutting back?" "Stopped completely. It's been 4 months. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, but every time I think about gambling, I remember Ethan's face when he found out about the debts." The eighth twist came when Allison revealed something Nathan didn't know. "Nathan, Rebecca called me 3 months ago." "What do you mean?" "She got my number and called me. She was desperate because Ethan was asking so many questions about you, about what had happened. She didn't know how to answer without speaking badly about you." Nathan felt a lump in his throat. "What did you tell her?" "I told her you've always been a good father, that you were going through a tough time, but that you loved Ethan more than anything in the world." Allison paused. "I also asked if she still loved you." "And what did she say?" "She said that was the hardest part of it all, that it would be easier if she didn't love you anymore." Nathan was silent, processing the information. Rebecca still loved him. After everything he'd done, after all the pain he'd caused, she still felt something for him. "Allie, what do I do with this information?" "You show her you've really changed, not with words, Nathan, with actions. And you remember that love isn't just a feeling, it's a choice you make every day." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now continuing, Friday came quickly, and with it the session with Dr. Emily that would include all family members. Ethan had specifically asked for both his parents to be present, and surprisingly, both Rebecca and Nathan agreed. Dr. Emily's office. Emily's office was located in a commercial building in downtown Portland, a welcoming space with comfortable sofas, soft colors, and a few plants. When Ethan arrived with his mother, he found his father already waiting in the reception area. "Hi, Dad," Ethan said, running to hug Nathan. "Hey, champ," Nathan replied, holding his son tightly. He looked over Ethan's head at Rebecca, who stood near the door, clearly nervous. "Hi, Becca," he said gently. "Hi," she replied, avoiding prolonged eye contact. Dr. Emily appeared at the office door. "The Miller family, shall we come in?" The office was arranged differently from the reception area. 4 chairs were placed in a semicircle, with a small table in the center, holding some toys and drawing materials. "Ethan," Dr. Emily said, "you can choose where you'd like to sit." Ethan looked at the chairs and picked one in the middle. His parents, without any coordination, sat on either side of him, leaving the 4th chair for the psychologist. "Perfect," Dr. Emily said, observing the arrangement. "Before we begin, I want everyone to know this isn't a judgment session. We're here to understand how you're all feeling and how we can make things work better for Ethan." She turned to the boy. "Ethan, this week, after our talk at school, you said you wanted your parents here. Why?" "Because I realized we're all hurting alone, and maybe if we hurt together, we could start getting better together too." The answer was so mature yet so simple that it left the 3 adults momentarily speechless. "And what would getting better together look like for you?" Dr. Emily asked. "It means my parents can be in the same place as me without being sad or angry. It means I can talk about one to the other without feeling like I'm betraying someone. It means we can still be a family even if it's a different kind of family than before." Rebecca felt tears burning in her eyes. How could her 10-year-old son express what she couldn't put into words? "Nathan," Dr. Emily said, "Ethan mentioned your struggles with gambling during the hearing. How did that make you feel?" Nathan took a deep breath. "At first, I was scared. It would hurt my chances at shared custody. But then I realized he was being brave by telling the truth, and that he knows me better than I thought." "Explain that." "He knew I was going to support group before I even told anyone. He noticed when I stopped betting. He was paying attention to me in a way that made me realize how much my actions affected him, even when I thought I was hiding everything." Dr. Emily nodded. "And how is your recovery going?" "It's hard. Every day, but it's working. It's been 4 months without placing a bet. And I've learned it's not just about quitting, it's about rebuilding the trust I broke." "Rebecca," Dr. Emily turned to her. "How do you feel hearing Nathan talk about his recovery?" Rebecca hesitated, confused. Part of me wants to believe it, wants to have hope, but another part is still scared. Scared of what? Of believing and being let down again. Of letting Ethan get closer to his dad, only to find out he's gone. Back to old habits. She looked directly at Nathan for the first time since they'd arrived, scared that I still feel things for him, and that it'll make me decide with my heart instead of my head. The unexpected twist came when Ethan asked, a question neither adult saw coming. "Mom, Dad, do you think we could ever be a family again one day?" The office fell completely silent. Rebecca and Nathan exchanged glances, both clearly caught off guard by the directness of the question. "Ethan," Rebecca said carefully, "this is complicated. I know it's complicated, but is it possible?" Nathan swallowed hard. "Son, your mother and I have a lot of work to do on ourselves before we can even think about something like that. But you still love each other, right?" This time it was Nathan who answered, looking directly at Rebecca. "I never stopped loving your mother, Ethan. Not for a single day." Rebecca felt as if the air had been knocked out of her lungs. She looked at Nathan, seeing sincerity in his eyes for the first time in years. "What about you, Mom?" Ethan asked. Rebecca glanced at her son, then at Nathan, then at Dr. Emily, as if searching for a way to escape the question. Finally, she sighed. "Yes, Ethan, I still love your father. But love isn't the only thing that makes a marriage work." "What else is needed?" "Trust," Rebecca said immediately. "Honesty. communication, respect. And you don't have those things? We're trying to rebuild them, Nathan admitted. It's a long process. Dr. Emily had observed the entire conversation in silence, taking notes. Now she leaned forward. Ethan, do you understand that even if your parents still love each other, it doesn't guarantee they'll get back together? I understand, but I also understand that if they love each other and are working to trust each other again, maybe it's possible. Ethan looked at his parents. I just don't want you to give up on each other because of me. What do you mean? Rebecca asked. Because if you're both so worried about protecting me that you don't try to fix things, then I'll feel guilty forever. The 10th twist came when Dr. Emily revealed her preliminary conclusions. Miller family, I'll be very honest with you. Ethan has exceptional emotional maturity for his age. He fully understands the implications of a custody decision and shows a deep ability to reason about family dynamics. She looked at each of them. But I also see that all three of you carry emotional wounds that need healing. Nathan, you're dealing not just with addiction but with guilt and shame. Rebecca, you're holding on to resentment, fear, and emotional exhaustion. And Ethan is taking on too much emotional responsibility for a child. What does this mean for the judge's decision? Nathan asked. It means I'll recommend ongoing family therapy, no matter what the custody ruling is. You need to learn how to be a healthy family, whatever that looks like. What about Ethan's preference on where to live? Rebecca asked. Dr. Emily smiled. You'll find that out at Monday's hearing, but I can say my recommendations will surprise all of you. Over the weekend, each member of the Miller family reflected in their own way. Ethan was nervous but hopeful. For the first time in 2 years, he had seen his parents talking civilly, even showing affection toward each other. Nathan spent Saturday in a state of controlled anxiety. He had openly admitted his feelings for Rebecca, something he hadn't done in years. He didn't know what to expect, but he felt something fundamental had shifted between them during the session with Dr. Emily. Rebecca, meanwhile, was wrestling with conflicting emotions. The session had stirred up feelings she'd tried to bury for 2 years. Seeing Nathan take responsibility for his actions, hearing about his recovery, realizing he still loved her, it was all shaking her determination to move on, alone. Sunday evening, Ethan did something neither parent expected. He called his father. Dad, can I sleep at your apartment tonight? I want to be with you before the hearing tomorrow. Nathan was surprised. Of course, son. But did your mom agree? I'll ask her now. Ethan went to the living room where Rebecca was distractedly watching TV, clearly nervous about the next day. Mom, can I sleep at Dad's apartment tonight? Rebecca looked at her son. Why? Because I want to spend time with him, and because I think you both need a night to think things through on your own. It was a surprisingly mature observation from Ethan. Rebecca realized her son was trying to give her space to process everything that had happened in the session. All right, she agreed, but call me if you need anything. An hour later, Nathan picked up Ethan. When they arrived at Nathan's small but tidy apartment, Ethan asked a direct question. Dad, do you really want our family to be together again? Nathan sat beside his son on the small living room couch. Ethan, more than anything in the world, but I want it to happen the right way. Your mom needs to trust me again, and that'll take time. What if she never fully trusts you again? Then I'll respect that, and we'll find a way to be a family even if we live in separate homes. Ethan nodded. Dad, can I tell you a secret? Of course. I think Mom still loves you a lot, but she's scared. Scared of what? Scared that if she lets you back into our lives and you mess up again, I'll get hurt. She's protecting me. Nathan felt a sharp pang in his chest. Rebecca was sacrificing her own happiness to shield Ethan from possible future disappointments. What do you think about that? I think Mom should let me decide how much risk I'm willing to take with you. The depth of Ethan's observation left Nathan speechless. His 10-year-old son had pinpointed the core issue keeping their family from healing. On Monday morning, the Miller family met again in the halls of Portland Family Court. This time there was a different energy between them. Ethan seemed more confident, Nathan more centered, and Rebecca, though still nervous, appeared less tense. Aunt Karen arrived minutes before the hearing. How are you all feeling? Better, Ethan answered. I think things will be okay, no matter what the judge decides. When they entered the courtroom, they found Judge Margaret with a completely different expression than the week before. She seemed softer, less intimidating. Miller family, she said as they settled in, I've received Dr. Emily Parker's detailed report on your family evaluation. Ethan held his breath. Ethan, the judge addressed him directly. Last week, you asked me why I didn't like children. I promised I'd have an answer for you. The courtroom fell silent. The truth is, I didn't dislike children in general, but I doubted their ability to fully understand the consequences of important decisions. Judge Margaret paused. You proved me wrong. The 11th twist came with the judge's revelation. 15 years ago, when I first started handling family cases, I believed adults always knew what was best for children. It took a very painful case for me to learn that isn't always true. She looked straight at Ethan. A child your age once begged me to listen to her in a custody case. I ignored her concerns because I thought she was too young to understand. 2 years later, I found out she'd been right about everything she'd tried to tell me. If I'd listened, I could have spared her so much unnecessary pain. Ethan's breath quickened. What happened to her? She grew up and became a child. Psychologist specializing in custody cases, Dr. Emily Parker. The shock was visible on everyone's faces in the room. The psychologist who had evaluated Ethan was the same child the judge had ignored years ago. When I read Dr. Emily's report about you, Ethan, I understood that you two have something in common, an exceptional ability to understand complex family dynamics and a determination to be heard, even when adults prefer to ignore you. Judge Margaret leaned back in her chair. Dr. Emily's report is extensive and detailed, but there are a few key recommendations I want to share with you. Ethan clenched his hands, bracing himself to hear his fate. First, both Mr. Nathan and Mrs. Rebecca demonstrate genuine love and concern for Ethan's well-being. Both are capable parents, each with their own strengths and weaknesses. Nathan and Rebecca exchanged a quick glance. Second, Ethan shows an exceptional understanding of his family situation and expresses clear preferences that should be respected. Third, the judge continued, this family is going through a healing process that could lead to reconciliation, but it will take time and ongoing professional support. The 12th twist came with the judge's decision. Therefore, my ruling is as follows. Custody will be shared between both parents, with Ethan spending 1 week with each parent alternately. However, this decision is contingent on the entire family's mandatory participation in monthly family therapy for the next 2 years. Ethan smiled, feeling a wave of relief. He wouldn't have to choose between his parents. Additionally, the judge went on, since Ethan has repeatedly expressed his desire to be involved in decisions affecting his life, he will have the right to request a review of this ruling every 6 months if his circumstances or preferences change. And there's one more condition, said the judge, looking specifically at Nathan. Mr. Nathan, you will continue attending the support group for compulsive gamblers and will provide monthly proof of attendance to the court for the next 2 years. Nathan nodded vigorously. Yes, Your Honor. Miller family, Judge Margaret said, her voice warmer than anyone had heard before, you have a unique opportunity here. You have an exceptional son who loves you unconditionally and wants to see your family healed. Don't waste this chance. She gently tapped the gavel. Case closed. When they left the courtroom, Ethan was beaming. His parents walked beside him, still processing everything that had happened. Ethan, Rebecca said, are you happy with the decision? I am, but are you? Nathan answered first. I'm relieved and grateful and determined to make it work. Me too, Rebecca agreed, surprising herself with her sincerity. That afternoon, the Miller family gathered at Nathan's apartment to plan how the new routine would work. It felt strange for Rebecca to be in the space her ex-husband had created for himself, but it was also comforting to see photos of Ethan on the walls and realize how hard Nathan had tried to make it a proper home for their son. Dad, Ethan said, can I make a suggestion? Of course. I think you should have dinner together at least once a week, all 3 of us, to talk about how everything's going. Nathan looked hesitantly at Rebecca. What do you think? Rebecca thought for a moment. 2 months ago, the idea of regularly having dinner with Nathan would have seemed impossible. Now, after everything that had happened, I think Ethan's right. We need to communicate better. The 13th twist came 3 weeks later during one of these family dinners. Ethan was at Nathan's apartment that week, and Rebecca had come for the planned dinner. The conversation was flowing naturally. Ethan talked about school, Nathan shared about work, and Rebecca told stories from the hospital. It was almost as if they were a normal family again. That's when Nathan made an unexpected announcement. "Rebecca, Ethan, I have some news for you." Both stopped eating and turned their attention to him. "I got a promotion at work. I'll be the manager at the dealership." "Dad, that's amazing," Ethan exclaimed. "Congratulations, Nathan," Rebecca said sincerely. "You deserve it." "Thank you. But the promotion comes with a condition. I'll need to travel to New York City once a month for meetings at headquarters." Ethan looked worried. "Will that affect our week together?" "No," Nathan quickly reassured him. "I'll schedule the trips for the weeks you're with your mum." Rebecca noticed how carefully Nathan had planned to avoid interfering with Ethan's time. It was a sign of how seriously he was taking his responsibilities as a father. "Actually," Nathan continued, "I wanted to propose something. With the promotion, I'll be making more money. I can help more with Ethan's expenses. And maybe we could think about going out occasionally, all three of us, so Ethan can have more family moments." The suggestion caught Rebecca off guard, but not unpleasantly. "What kind of outings?" Ethan asked, clearly interested. "Movies, the park, the beach, things families do together?" Rebecca hesitated. "Nathan, I don't know if—" "Mom," Ethan interrupted, "it would just be so I can spend time with both of you together. It doesn't have to mean anything more than that." Rebecca looked at her son, then at Nathan. "We can try, but slowly." "Slowly," Nathan agreed, smiling. The 14th twist came a month later during the first of these family outings. They had gone to the Oregon Aquarium, something Ethan had wanted to do for months. The boy was enchanted by the fish and sharks, running from one tank to another with excitement. Nathan and Rebecca walked behind him, talking more easily than they had in years. "He's happy," Rebecca observed, watching Ethan press his face against the glass of a jellyfish tank. "Happier than I've seen him in a long time," Nathan agreed. "You seem different too," Rebecca said, glancing at him. "How so?" "Lighter. Less anxious, like you were before." She stopped, not wanting to mention the gambling directly. "It's because I'm not hiding anything anymore. It's amazing how much energy secrets take." They paused in front of a large tank filled with colorful tropical fish. Ethan had run into a friend from school and was eagerly comparing marine life facts. "Rebecca," Nathan said softly, "can I ask you something?" "Go ahead." "Do you think you'll ever be able to trust me completely again?" The question had haunted Rebecca for weeks. "I don't know, Nathan. Honestly, I don't. But I know you're trying, and that means something. Does it mean enough for us to maybe consider trying again someday?" Rebecca looked at Ethan, who was now excitedly explaining something to his friend, his eyes shining with happiness. "Maybe," she finally said, "but it would be a very long process, and it would have to be for the right reason." "What would the right reason be?" "Because we want to be together, not just because we think it would be better for Ethan." Nathan nodded. "I understand, and I want you back, Rebecca, not just as Ethan's mum, but as you." Before Rebecca could respond, Ethan came running back. "Mom, Dad, did you see the seahorses? They're incredible. Did you know the male carries the babies?" "Really?" Nathan pretended to be surprised. "How does that work?" As Ethan eagerly explained seahorse facts, Rebecca watched the interaction between father and son. Nathan had truly changed. He was present, attentive, genuinely interested in what Ethan had to say. That night, when they returned home, Nathan dropped Rebecca and Ethan off at her apartment. Ethan made an observation that surprised his mother. "Mom, you two were acting weird today." "Weird how?" "Weird. Happy. You laughed together a few times. I haven't seen that in a long time." Rebecca realized Ethan was right. During their outing, She had caught herself genuinely enjoying Nathan's company, without the constant weight of resentment and distrust. "Ethan, how would you feel if your dad and I tried talking more about our relationship?" "Talking how?" "Talking about maybe trying to be a couple again someday." Ethan stopped putting away the toys he'd bought at the aquarium and looked straight at his mother. "I'd be happy, but only if you both really want to, not just because of me." It was exactly the same concern Nathan had expressed. "Why do you say that?" "Because if you stay together just for me and it doesn't work out, I'll feel guilty. But if you stay together because you love each other and want to be together, then it'll work." Rebecca hugged her son, impressed once again by his maturity. "Ethan, what would you do if you were me?" "I'd give Dad a chance. He's changed. And you're happier when you're with him." The 15th twist came 2 weeks later during one of their family therapy sessions. Dr. Emily had noticed a significant shift in the dynamic between Nathan and Rebecca and decided to address it directly. "Nathan, Rebecca, I've noticed you've been communicating very differently these past few weeks. Ethan, have you noticed it too?" "Yes," Ethan answered immediately. "They're acting more like friends, like they used to before." "And how do you feel about that?" Dr. Emily asked the parents. Nathan looked at Rebecca before answering. "It's confusing, good, but confusing." "Rebecca?" "I agree with Nathan. It's like we're rediscovering good things about each other that I'd forgotten." "Does that make you consider the possibility of reconciliation?" Rebecca and Nathan exchanged glances. It was the first time someone had asked them directly in a therapeutic setting. "I'd like that," Nathan admitted, "but I don't want to pressure Rebecca." "And you, Rebecca?" I think it might be possible, but it would have to be very slow and with clear rules." "What kind of rules?" "Full transparency about finances, continued participation in the support group, couples therapy in addition to family therapy." Rebecca was clearly thinking as she spoke. "And a dating period before we consider living together again." Ethan smiled. "Like you're getting to know each other all over again?" "Exactly," Rebecca confirmed. Dr. Emily nodded approvingly. "Those are very realistic and healthy expectations. Nathan, do you agree to these terms?" "Absolutely. In fact, I was going to suggest something similar." "And Ethan, how do you feel about your parents?" "Dating again?" Ethan laughed. "It's weird thinking about my parents dating, but if it's what will make everyone happy." The 16th twist came 3 months later, during Nathan and Rebecca's first official date. They had decided to take it slow, with occasional dinners without Ethan, to reconnect as adults, not just as co-parents. They were at a simple restaurant in downtown Portland, far from the places they used to frequent when they were married. The conversation flowed naturally, like two old friends catching up. "Becca," Nathan said suddenly, "can I tell you something I've never told anyone?" "Of course." "The day you asked me to leave after you found out about the gambling, that night I went to a casino." Rebecca felt her stomach drop. "Nathan, no, wait, let me finish." Nathan held her hand across the table. "I walked into the casino with every penny left in our joint account. I was going to bet it all. If I won, I'd come home a hero who had solved all our problems. If I lost, well, at least you and Ethan would be free of me." Rebecca was pale. "What stopped you?" "Something Ethan said that morning. He asked if I was going to pick him up from school like I always did on Fridays. And I realized that if I gambled and lost everything, I'd never be able to pick up my son from school again. I'd never get to be his real dad again." Nathan took a deep breath. "So I walked out of that casino and went straight to the first support group I found online. It was the first meeting I ever attended." Rebecca felt tears burning her eyes. "Why didn't you ever tell me this before?" "Because I was ashamed, and because I wanted to be sure I was really better before using it as a way back to you both." "And do you think you're better now?" "No. I think I'll be a recovering gambler for the rest of my life, but I've learned to live with it, to accept help, to be honest about my struggles." Nathan's raw honesty moved Rebecca deeply. It was the kind of vulnerability she'd missed for years in their marriage, Nathan, I need to tell you something too. What? That night you left. After Ethan went to bed. I called you over and over. I know, I saw the missed calls the next day. Do you know why I called? Nathan shook his head. Because even though I was furious, even though I knew you'd lied to me, I was afraid you'd do something reckless. I still cared about you. And now? Rebecca looked him straight in the eye. Now I'm realizing I never stopped caring. I was just protecting my heart. That night, for the first time in 2 years, Nathan and Rebecca kissed. It was a hesitant kiss, careful, loaded with as much history as hope. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot, as we're just starting out. Now continuing. The 17th twist came 6 months later, during a family meeting Ethan had requested. Now 11, he had visibly grown, and his emotional maturity continued to impress everyone around him. Mom, Dad, he said, sitting between them on Rebecca's living room sofa, I want to talk to you about something. Rebecca and Nathan exchanged worried glances. Nathan had moved back into the apartment they'd shared before the separation 3 weeks earlier, but they still slept in separate rooms as they rebuilt their relationship. What is it, son? Nathan asked. I know you're trying to protect me, but I've noticed you're both afraid to be completely happy. The observation caught them off guard. What do you mean? Rebecca asked. You've been dating for months. Dad's back home. You kiss and hug when you think I'm not looking. But there's still a part of you that's scared. Nathan leaned forward. Ethan, what exactly have you noticed? I've noticed you don't talk about the future, about whether you'll remarry, have more kids, buy a new house. It's like you're only living in the present because you're afraid to plan ahead. Rebecca was stunned. Ethan was right. She and Nathan had been so careful rebuilding their relationship that they avoided any talk of future commitments. What do you think we should do? She asked. I think you should stop being afraid. You've already proven to each other that you've changed. They've already proven they can trust each other again, but they're still acting like they're waiting for something to go wrong. Ethan stood up and walked to the living room table, grabbing a piece of paper and a pen. I want us to make a list together, a list of things we want to do as a family in the coming years. It was a simple but powerful idea. Over the next 2 hours, the three Millers created a detailed list of family dreams, trips they wanted to take, traditions they wanted to establish, goals they wanted to achieve together. Number 15, said Ethan, reading from the list. Dad and Mom get remarried in a small beach ceremony. Nathan and Rebecca exchanged glances, both blushing. Ethan, Rebecca began. Mum, have you two talked about this? Not directly, Nathan admitted. Then it's time to talk. The 18th twist came the next morning when Nathan found the courage to bring up the subject of marriage directly. They were having coffee in the kitchen while Ethan got ready for school. Nathan held his cup with both hands, clearly nervous. Becca, about what Ethan said yesterday, about us getting remarried. Rebecca stopped stirring the sugar in her coffee. What about it? Have you thought about it? Honestly? Yes, but I don't know if I'm ready. What would make you feel ready? Rebecca thought carefully. I think time. More time living together, being a normal family, without the pressure of rebuilding something all the time. Nathan nodded. How much time? I don't know, maybe a year, 2 years, when it feels natural, not forced. What if... Nathan hesitated. What if I proposed to you today? Rebecca looked up, surprised. Today? Not today, literally. But if I asked in the next few weeks, what would your answer be? Rebecca looked at him for a long moment. She saw the man she'd fallen in love with 15 years ago, but also someone who had grown, who had faced his demons and emerged stronger. My answer would be yes, she finally said, but with one condition. What? That you ask me because you want to spend the rest of your life with me, not because you think it's what Ethan wants or what would be best for our family. Nathan stood up, walked around the kitchen table, and knelt beside Rebecca's chair. Rebecca Miller, I love you. I love your strength, your compassion, your determination. I love how you are as a mother, as a professional, how you fight for what you believe in. He took her hands in his. "I want to marry you because I can't imagine a life without you. Will you marry me?" Rebecca felt tears streaming down her. "Nathan Miller, yes, 1,000 times yes." It was at that moment Ethan appeared in the kitchen, backpack on, ready for school. He stopped in the doorway, watching the scene. "Finally," he exclaimed, making both parents laugh through their tears. The 19th twist came 3 weeks later as the family was planning the wedding. They had decided on a small beach ceremony, exactly as Ethan had suggested on the list. They were sitting at the living room table, surrounded by wedding magazines and guest lists, when the phone rang. It was Dr. Emily. "Rebecca, sorry to bother you, but I have an unusual question. Would you be willing to participate in a study I'm conducting on families who reconciled after custody cases?" "What kind of participation?" Rebecca asked. "Occasional interviews, permission to include your story, anonymously, in academic papers. Maybe speaking at conferences about children's rights. Why our family? Because you represent a rare example of how genuinely listening to a child can transform a destructive family situation into a story of healing and growth." Nathan and Rebecca exchanged glances. Ethan, who had overheard the conversation, chimed, I think we should do it. If our story can help other families like ours." "Ethan is right," said Nathan. "Maybe we can help other parents understand it's worth listening to their children. And help other kids see it's worth fighting to be heard," added Rebecca. The 20th twist came on the wedding day 6 months later. The ceremony was small, held at Waterfront Park in Portland, with just 15 close guests. Ethan was the ring bearer and also the one who walked Rebecca down the aisle. When the officiant asked if anyone objected to the union, Ethan joked, "I object. To how long it took, it was about time." The laughter that followed echoed across the beach, creating a moment of pure joy none of the guests would ever forget. But the real surprise came during the vows. Nathan and Rebecca had decided to write separate vows, but when it was Nathan's turn to speak, he did something unexpected. "Rebecca, my vows to you have already been spoken by someone much wiser than me," he said, turning to Ethan. "Ethan, do you want to repeat what you told me last night?" Ethan blushed, but stood up from his front row seat. "Dad asked me to say what I thought he felt about Mom," he began, his clear voice carrying across the quiet beach. "So I said, Dad, you love Mom the way I love both of you, not because she's perfect, but because she's her. Not because she never makes mistakes, but because she always tries to fix the ones she makes. And not because it's easy, but because some people are worth every effort." There wasn't a dry eye on the beach. Rebecca was openly crying, and even Nathan had tears streaming down his face. "And Mom," Ethan continued, "last night you told me you wanted to promise Dad you'd trust him completely, but I think you should promise something else." "What?" Rebecca asked, curious. "Promise you'll let him love you the way you deserve to be loved." The depth of Ethan's insight left everyone emotional. Rebecca had spent so long protecting herself that she'd forgotten how to let herself be fully loved. "Ethan," Rebecca said through tears, "that's the most beautiful vow I've ever heard." The 21st twist came during the reception after the ceremony. Aunt Karen had prepared a surprise for the family, a photo album documenting their journey from the first court hearing to that day. There were pictures of the Miller family on their first outings after the custody decision, moments from therapy sessions with Dr. Emily's permission, birthday celebrations, holidays, and small everyday moments. "Aunt Karen, when did you take all these photos?" Ethan asked, amazed. "Over the last 2 years, I wanted to document your healing because I knew one day it would be a beautiful story to tell." As they flipped through the album, the Miller family realized how much they'd changed. In the early photos, everyone seemed guarded, cautious. In the most recent ones, they were a relaxed, happy, complete family. "You know what I see here?" Nathan said, pointing to a recent photo of the 3 of them laughing in the kitchen. "I see what Ethan always saw, a family that just needed to learn to trust each other again." The 22nd twist came 6 months after the wedding when Ethan turned 12. For his birthday party, he made a special request. "I want to invite some special people," he announced to his parents. "Who?" "Judge Margaret and Dr. Emily. They're part of our story too. To everyone's surprise, both accepted the invitation. Judge Margaret arrived at the party with a special gift, a bound copy of all the legal records from Ethan's case, with a personal dedication. "For Ethan," she wrote, "who taught me that courage has no age and that some of the wisest people I've known were only 10 years old. Keep fighting to be heard." Dr. Emily brought something even more special: the news that the study on reconciled families had been accepted for publication in an international academic journal. "Your story will help families all over the world," she announced. "And Ethan, you'll be a co-author of the paper." "What do you mean?" asked Ethan, confused. "You'll write a section about the child's perspective in custody cases. Your words, your ideas, your experiences." The 23rd twist came when Ethan, now 12 and visibly more mature, revealed something unexpected during the party. "I've decided what I want to be when I grow up," he announced to all the guests. "What?" asked Rebecca and Nathan in unison. "I want to be a lawyer specializing in children's rights, like Dr. Emily, but on the legal side." Judge Margaret smiled. "Ethan, you'd make an excellent lawyer, but why children's rights specifically?" "Because I learned that kids have important things to say, but adults don't always know how to listen. I want to help other kids be heard, like you all helped me." It was an impressive goal for a 12-year-old, but no one doubted Ethan had the determination and intelligence to achieve it. "And you know what my first case will be when I graduate?" Ethan continued. "What?" asked Nathan. "I'll create a law that says every child in custody cases has the right to their own lawyer, separate from their parents, someone who represents just the child's interests." The room fell silent. It was a revolutionary and much-needed idea. "Ethan," said Judge Margaret, "that's one of the best ideas I've heard in 15 years of working in family law." The 24th twist came 2 years later, when Ethan was 14. The Miller family had moved to a bigger house in a quieter neighborhood in Portland, where Ethan had his own room and space to study. It was a Sunday afternoon when Ethan called his parents for a serious talk in the living room. "Mom, Dad, have you ever thought about having another child?" The question caught them completely off guard. They'd discussed it privately a few times, but never in front of Ethan. "Why do you ask?" Rebecca replied carefully. "Because I'd like to have a brother or sister, and because I think you'd be even better parents now than when I was little." Nathan and Rebecca exchanged glances. It was true. They'd grown so much as people and as parents during their journey of reconciliation. "Ethan," said Nathan, "having another child is a very big decision. It's not something we do just because you want a sibling." "I know, but is it something you want to?" Rebecca sighed. "To be honest, Ethan, yes. Your father and I have talked about it. But we were afraid of how you'd react. Afraid I'd be jealous? Maybe. Or that you'd think we were trying to make up for lost time with you." Ethan laughed. "Mom, you didn't lose time with me. You taught me that families can heal, that people can change, that it's worth fighting for the ones you love. That's not lost time. That's the most valuable thing you could have taught me." The 25th twist came 9 months later, when Rebecca gave birth to a baby girl, Olivia Miller. Ethan had chosen the name, saying he wanted a sister with a name as strong and beautiful as Mom's. At the hospital, holding his newborn sister, Ethan made a promise loud enough for the whole family to hear. "Olivia, I promise you'll grow up in a family where everyone is heard, where everyone is loved, and where everyone has the right to be who they truly are." It was in that moment that Rebecca and Nathan fully realized how Ethan had been transformed by his experience. He wasn't just a child who had fought to be heard. He had become an advocate for other children, a protector of the family they had rebuilt together. The 26th twist came when Ethan turned 15. For his birthday, he made a special and surprising request. "I want to have my party at the courthouse where it all began." "Ethan," Rebecca said, "I don't think that's possible." "Actually," Nathan interrupted, "I'll call Dr. Emily. If anyone can get that permission, it's her." To everyone's surprise, Judge Margaret not only allowed the party at the courthouse, but offered to organize it herself. She had recently retired and wanted to do something special for the family that had changed her perspective on her work. The party was small but meaningful. Ethan invited his school friends, family, and the people who had been important in the Miller family's journey: Dr. Emily, Judge Margaret, some members of Nathan's support group, and Rebecca's co-workers. During the party, Ethan gave a speech that moved everyone present. 5 years ago, I was in this very room, 10 years old, trying to convince adults that I deserved to be heard. Today I'm here at 15, still fighting for children to be heard, but now not just for myself. He pointed to different people in the room. This room taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right even when you're afraid. It taught me that families can break and mend, that people can change, that true love is worth any struggle. Ethan looked at his parents, who were holding Olivia in their arms. But most of all, it taught me that when you fight for something that truly matters, you don't fight alone. You find people who will stand by you, who will believe in you, who will fight beside you. The 27th twist came when Ethan announced his next project. With Judge Margaret and Dr. Emily's help, we're launching a pilot program here in Portland. It's called Little Voices, Big Rights. It will train lawyers to specifically represent children in custody cases. The room erupted in applause. In just 5 years, Ethan had gone from a child fighting to be heard to a young man creating systems so other children could be heard too. And the first lawyer trained in the program, Ethan continued, will be my mum. Rebecca nearly dropped. Olivia in surprise, Ethan, I'm not a lawyer. Not yet, he said with a smile. But you always wanted to study law before I was born. And now that Olivia is here and I'm older, maybe it's time to make that dream come true. It was true. Rebecca had given up her dream of studying law when she became pregnant with Ethan. At 22, now at 37, with the family stable and the experience she'd gained. It's a crazy idea, Nathan said, and I think you should do it. The 28th twist came 2 years later, when Rebecca graduated from law school in an emotional ceremony where Ethan, now 17, was her keynote speaker. Rebecca Miller, Ethan said during his speech, you've always been my hero, but today you've become the hero of many other children who will be represented by you in the future. Olivia, now 2.5, sat on Nathan's lap in the front row, clapping excitedly every time she heard her mother's name. Mommy, Mommy, she shouted, making the entire audience laugh. After graduation, Rebecca began working with the program Little Voices, Big Rights, which had expanded to other cities in the state of New York. Her first case involved an 8-year-old girl whose parents were locked in a bitter custody battle, a situation that reminded her so much of her own family years earlier. The 29th twist came when Ethan turned 18 and was accepted into Harvard Law School, just as he had planned. At his high school graduation party, Ethan was chosen to give the class speech. Instead of speaking generally about the future, he told his own story. At 10 years old, I was in a courtroom fighting to be heard. Today, at 18, I'm still fighting for children to be heard. The difference is, now I'm not fighting alone. He gestured to the audience where Rebecca, Nathan, and Olivia sat, along with dozens of families whose lives had been touched by the program Ethan had helped create. I've learned that real change doesn't happen in a day, or a year, or even a decade. It happens when you dedicate your whole life to making a difference, one family at a time, one child at a time. Ethan looked directly at his parents. And I've learned that true heroes aren't perfect people who never make mistakes. They're people who, when they do make mistakes, have the courage to admit them, the strength to change, and enough love to fight for the second chance everyone deserves. The 30th and final twist came 5 years later, when Ethan, now a law graduate working as a children's rights attorney, received a phone call that would change everything. Ethan Miller, this is the Supreme Court calling. Your proposed constitutional amendment guaranteeing independent legal representation for children in custody cases has been approved for review by Congress. Ethan, now 23, held the phone with trembling hands. The project that had begun as a 10-year-old boy's dream was about to become national law. That evening, the Miller family gathered to celebrate, not just Ethan's achievement, but the extraordinary journey that had brought them there. Ethan, Rebecca said, holding Olivia, now 6 and already showing signs of the same intelligence and determination as her brother. You did it, you really did it. No, Ethan corrected, looking around the table where they all sat. We did it. all of us, because I've learned that real change only happens when people come together and fight as one. Nathan raised his glass, a toast to the Miller family, a family that started broken and grew stronger in the places that were mended. And a toast, Rebecca added, to the brave boy who taught us that being heard isn't a privilege. It's so right. Ethan smiled, feeling the weight of everything they had endured together. From the courtroom where it all began to this moment, they had proven that families can heal, that people can change, and that sometimes the most important voices come from the smallest hearts. And a toast, Olivia said in her child's voice, but with a seriousness that reminded them so much of Ethan at that age, to siblings who fight together. Everyone laughed, but they also realized Olivia had captured something essential. They weren't just a family that had healed. They were a family that had learned to fight for other families too. As they embraced that night, Ethan thought of Judge Margaret, who had become an honorary grandmother to Olivia. He thought of Dr. Emily, who now ran a National Children's Rights Institute. He thought of all the children who had been helped by the program he had helped create. But most of all, he thought about the 10-year-old boy who had entered that courtroom afraid, yet determined to be heard. That boy could never have imagined that his personal struggle would become a national change, that his broken family would grow stronger, that his pain would turn into purpose. Ethan had learned that sometimes the most important turning points in life aren't the big dramatic ones. They're the small persistent ones. The daily decision to fight for what's right, to believe people can change, to hold on to hope even when everything seems impossible. And that night, as he looked at his family gathered around the table, Ethan Miller knew every moment of struggle, every tear shed, every battle fought had been worth it. Because he had learned the most important truth of all. When you fight for love, you never truly lose. It may take time to win, you may face unexpected twists, you may be tested in ways you never imagined. But in the end, love always finds a way. The end. Tell us in the comments, do you believe children should have more say in decisions that affect their lives? Share your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming stories like this one.